Hi, thank you for clicking on the video, and I hope everyone is doing really well. So I woke up this morning looking like I had been run over by a truck full of elephants. This is my attempt to make my face not look so swollen. I know why my face was super puffy and swollen. Like, my eyelids are swollen, under my eyes are super puffy and red. I used a product no, I'm not supposed to use on my face. Basically, every time I use it, I have a reaction to it, and I keep using it because it works for one thing, but it does that. So I'm sorry for my appearance today. I feel really funky in my face, and I look funky in my face too. So second thing I want to address is the technical difficulties that I have been having for months. Clearly, if there's a weird buzzing of background sound, it means that I am still fighting with my microphone to not do that, and I apologize if it is still doing that. I thought I had it fixed, so I didn't buy a new microphone, and then it was back, and then it was gone, so I apologize in the event that there is an obnoxious, annoying buzzing or other annoying sounds in the background. Those things out of the way, let's jump into today's video because I know it's going to be a long one. So today that I'm filming is December 31st, 2022. By the time this video comes out, it will probably be like March, and this will be all old news and no one will be talking about it. But per usual, I am way behind the trendy topics. So this is from the Ulta Beauty podcast, the beauty of ... and then they have different influencers to come in and talk about a different aspect of beauty. In this episode, it is Virgie Tovar, our favorite fat activist, who I didn't know was still relevant. One of the things I don't like to comment on is the way that a person dresses. I mean, who am I to talk? I'm still wearing my pajamas, okay? Let's be real. I do have a fashion background. She says she loves fashion. I think you should wear what you like, what you feel comfortable in, but there is no way that she feels comfortable in that dress. I'm sorry. There's no support. It looks like it's falling off of her. And the first time I watched this podcast, I could not stop staring. I was like, I can't focus on what you're saying because I'm waiting for a wardrobe malfunction to happen at any second. That is my first critique. I don't think that dress was made for you. And that has nothing to do with her being overweight or obese or anything. I think it's the style of the dress and the size of her boobs. That is why it's doing what it's doing. Okay, let's just get into the video. And I need to shut up.
Okay, well, hi friends. Welcome to the Beauty of an Ulta Beauty podcast, where we talk with and learn from pioneers that are helping us redefine what beauty is and where beauty lives. I am David Lopez. I've
had many titles in my life: celebrity hairstylist, beauty content creator, general feel-good enthusiast, but today
I am your host, and I'm excited to have these very beautiful conversations with some really beautiful guests. I want to let everyone know that this is a safe zone. It is a judgment-free zone where we honor curiosity and respect in all forms. I want to welcome our guest, Virgie Tovar, author, scholar, activist. Welcome.
I need to Google something. Scholar. What is the definition of the word scholar? All right. A specialist in a particular branch of study, especially the humanity and distinguishable academic. Okay, so she is a specialist in a particular branch of study. Is she a distinguished academic? I don't think so. That is not an or. That is a part of the definition of scholar. Don't believe she is a distinguished academic. Other than the words that come out of her mouth that irritate me, the way she speaks comes across as really uneducated. And I know that to a degree you can't help the way you speak, but also to a degree you can. I can come across as sounding unintelligent. I can tell she's thinking about what she's saying, and she's very meticulous and strategic on the words that she chooses to say. However, they are projected in a manner that comes across as, for lack of better terms, dumb. You're not helping women when you speak like this and then also claim to be an intelligent person on the subject you're speaking on. It's really hard to listen to.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Of course. in my research with you and following your Instagram and kind of just following your journey, there's something that's very irreverent about just your general demeanor. And I wondered, was it always that way? And in your book, You Have the Right to Remain Fat, you said in the beginning something that really stood out to me. My body used to belong to me. And in those first couple sentences that you were speaking, the joy that you had as a child where you would kind of jiggle on the floor and like feel the weight of that, it really struck me.
So the first time I listened to this podcast, this really stood out to me, and I was like, it resonated with me. I think as children, we are not aware of our bodies until someone makes us aware of our bodies. Like it doesn't register, at least for me, this is my experience of like, it did not register that obviously I knew I had a body, but it did not register that I had a body worth focusing on. This didn't matter because I was a child, and it only started to matter when it started to matter to other people. My body belonged to me. It was consciously, it mattered to someone. It was just me if I chose for it to matter. It did not, I did not choose for it to matter until people made it their business. And therefore, then it no longer belonged to me. It was everybody else's to comment on, to criticize, to put down, to control. Losing that sense of belonging that I didn't even know I had, to try and regain it, I wanted to control my body. So this part really resonated with me.
And I remember when I wrote that, and it was like, that's the opening, right? Because I think there's a universality to it, really. Like when we're children, we're all born with this incredible curiosity and self-acceptance. All the tools that we need as human beings, we have them when we're born.
I don't completely agree with that statement. We're born with all the tools. We're not. There is an intuitive nature to children, and we can either tap into it and cultivate it, or it can be corrupted. This is just me thinking back on my experience as a child, and I don't recall any moment in time where I accepted myself. I just was. I remember there was a moment of, this is me, and then there was a moment of being told I need to change, and then there was the lack of, this is me after that. There was a definitive moment where volume 1 of my life ended and volume 2 started. And there was a moment and before I just was, and after I needed to not be what I was. I don't think there is a self-awareness of personal acceptance.
Fat phobia, which is a form of bigotry against higher weight people, is what took me out of my body. And I feel like once I learned fat phobia, I had a sense of, this is my body and this is me. There was a separation. And when I was a kid, those two things weren't separate ever. They were one and the same. And I think the truth is that was all of us on some level, you know?
In the journey for myself, and it's not something I talk about all the time, but one of my earliest memories of going into puberty was my relationship with my body, and family members kind of pinching my belly.
I think that puberty is probably one of the most defined moments in a person's life. It's something that the majority of us will go through. While everyone's life experience is different, it's the one thing that we almost all of us go through, and almost all of us go through it similarly, very, very mirroring each other's experiences. I would say for the majority, again, of us, it sucked. And for a lot of us, it sucked even more because we had a poor relationship with our bodies prior to puberty. My eating disorder has been present my entire life, practically. But why was it when I entered puberty that it was just so amplified? And the reason being is I am trying to control my body and keep it a certain way. And nature in puberty is saying no. And I'm fighting against my own nature, trying to control something that just wants to breathe, just wants to do what it's meant to do, and I am saying no.
Just for people who are listening, can you talk more about the difference between maybe fat phobia and fat activism and maybe the intersections between the two?
Yeah, so I mean, fat phobia is a form of bigotry, right? And a lot of people don't know that because we've been taught that our attitudes towards higher weight people are rightfully negative because of health reasons.
I can't remember who it was, but I was watching a reaction video to this podcast, and I believe it was Obese to Beast who said something, I think it was him, but it was like, her points are right if you've already chosen to believe her narrative. So it sounds really bad to criticize what she just said because it's like, well, she just stated that it's bigotry, and bigotry is bad. What we're forgetting is that weight is something that can change. She believes that weight is something that you can't change. Like, she believes that weight loss is impossible. And so in order for all of her statements after that narrative of weight loss is impossible to be true, you have to believe that weight loss is impossible. The reason why people who speak out against this kind of narrative get so much backlash, people are hearing the words like bigotry, discrimination, fat phobia, all of these really negative, harsh words, and thinking, oh, you're criticizing someone who's speaking out against discrimination and bigotry, you must be the problem. They are, without realizing it, accepting the original narrative of weight loss is impossible.
That our notion of health is deeply flawed, problematic, and kind of living in the 1800s. Like, the BMI was invented in the 1800s, okay?
By European men.
By like this Belgian mathematician. He wasn't even a physician, and he ended up becoming the grandfather of eugenics.
This is a non-acceptable debate tactic where you're trying to equate a person's character with the factual information that they have provided. Just because he was a piece of shit doesn't negate the information that he has provided to help modern medicine and science and advancements. That doesn't make the information then false because he was horrible.
So, like, just to contextualize how we're defining health, it's by a Belgian mathematician from 1830.
People used to steal dead bodies to learn how bodies worked. They didn't know things and they wanted to know things, and this is how they got to know things. And yeah, a lot of people went by illegal means and horrible, disgusting means to try and understand the human body. Should they have? No, but if they hadn't, we wouldn't have modern medicine. Modern medicine had to start somewhere. It sounds like I am condoning like grave robbery, killing people for cadavers for study, but I'm not. It's just like, yeah, that shit happened. And now, yeah, we are reaping the benefits of those horrible things so that we can save lives. We can't change the past. We can try to improve the future with the information that we know and we have been provided with. Just to give context of what we're dealing with. That's not context. That's just like irrelevant facts.
Who is the grandfather of eugenics? So, end parentheses. So, like, you know, right? Like, in fact, fat phobia is an actual legitimate form of discrimination. It aligns with other types of discrimination, like around race or gender or any number of marginalized identity.
This is where we get back into that point of her stance and points are accepted, but only if you accept her original notion of it's a form of discrimination, similarly to race and gender. And so the thing is, like, you can't change your race. To discriminate against someone for something that that is completely out of their hands of choice, control, you lacking the understanding of that identity. Discrimination of any kind is unacceptable. Weight is something you can change. You can't say a measurement tool is discriminatory. That's like saying a ruler is discriminatory against small penised men.
In the sense that, it's largely a belief system that isn't really based in evidence or data or science.
So physiology, the branch of biology that deals with the normal functions of living organisms and their parts. So The branch of biology, which is a science, is not based in science, is what you're telling me. And not based in facts or data or evidence, except for the fact that all of that is not true because it's biology, which is a evidence and data-based science, I believe.
But that is socially condoned and creates an idea of some people are better than others.
Right.
And so fat phobia manifests in a lot of different ways, like everything from a wage gap, like plus size women make $9,000 to $19,000 less per year than straight size women. There's also well documented medical discrimination.
Having a nurse or doctor ask to weigh you is not discrimination. And I know she didn't say that, but that is a thing that is said. That it's discriminatory to ask your patient if they will be weighed. It's not discrimination because you have the right to refuse.
And things like, things we all know, like how higher weight people are considered less appealing partners, less appealing dates.
Oh, I'm so sorry that the person you're interested in is not interested in you. Welcome to the motherfucking club. That's not a fat person's problem. That's a people problem. Not really even a problem. It's a preference. Like, you can't force someone to be attracted to you.
So there's all these different, obviously fashion, like there's all different ways that fat phobia manifests.
Clothing is not fat phobic. If a designer or brand chooses to design for a specific demographic and you just happen to not be in that demographic, they don't hate you. They're just trying to make money off of people who will buy their clothes. It's called marketing and business, and has nothing to do with fat phobia.
And it's legal in 48 out of 50 states. So just to be clear, like you can be overtly fired for your weight and get in absolutely no trouble in 48 out of 50 states.
Yeah, I could be fired for my gender. I could be fired for my sexuality. I can be fired for any reason. And the best part is they don't have to tell me. Is it right? No.
So that's that. I mean, fat activism is sort of the response to fat phobia. It's essentially kind of an intersectional politic that looks at fat phobia and says, this is wrong.
You just politicized the human body. Why? Not everything has to be political.
There's nothing wrong with being fat. This is totally a natural part of body diversity. One is the problem and fat activism is the response. And I think I want to say, right, like our current cultural attitude is that the solution to fat phobia is for fat people to become thin people. And we were never, I'm not a thin person.
You did not pop out of the womb looking like that. You grew into it. I feel like you have to go through a thin before you get to the fat, right? So you were at some point, even if it was a long, long time ago, at some point you were a small little person. Technically, there's a baby in all of us.
There's not secretly a thin person inside of me. There's, you know what I mean? There's this prevailing myth. And this is so important, right? Even people who understand what fat phobia is and really don't want to perpetuate ideas of fat phobia, they might still believe that a fat person is secretly a thin person.
It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. I feel like this is a thing that they've made up. I've never met anybody who thinks there's a thin person inside of an obese person. Like, that's really weird. It sounds like super made up to make a point, to drive your own point home, and then try to make it sound like average sized people made it up, but it was really just the fat people who made it up. You made up an issue, and then you're like, this is an issue. We gotta change it. And it's like, well, you made it an issue. It wasn't an issue before, but you made it that way.
And that I'm really here to like dismantle it. So I see like the culture is like, oh, solution to fat phobia, just try and force and bully every fat person to become a thin person.
That doesn't happen. Nobody is going up to fat people on the street and telling them to lose weight. No one is doing that. And this is another thing that they make up.
And fat activism says, no, you do not blame the individual who's experiencing discrimination for the discrimination. You end the discrimination.
You spoke on a couple things there that really stood out to me. One is just really we're looking at different layers where fat phobia exists. We're talking about the interpersonal layers, you know, how we relate to it and how it shows up in our lives. As a cisgendered, queer, gay man, you know, our whole identity revolves around like, let's be as fit as possible, thin as possible, be as desirable as possible. Fat phobia.
Wanting to look good is not fat phobia. Wanting to look a certain way is not fat phobia. I don't know any other way to say it. It just isn't.
We love seeing magazine covers of what you said, a fat celebrity, for lack of a better word, that now has lost 100 pounds. We love to see that. Oh, so we knew it. It's like the psychology of it is like, see, I knew it. I knew that skinny person was always inside there.
No one thinks that way. When a celebrity loses weight, you know what I do? I'm like, huh, they did that. Moving on with my life. Like, it goes back to the whole, when you're a child, your body belongs to you. And then when it becomes someone else's focus, it no longer is yours. Like, I thought we were trying to get away from that. So no one else's body is my issue. Like, I don't care. I have enough problems on my own. Your body, your choice, go do what you want to do. It almost feels like the existence of thin people is like discrimination against them. Do you think there's a fat person in all of us? Because that's what it sounds like.
There now, look at them, how happy they must be. So systemically, we still perpetuate this. The system of gyms, of diets that are not seen as diets, like, you know, I'm going to get a juice cleanse. And it's like, oh, that's healthy. You know, I'm doing it for health reasons, but really, are you doing it to control weight in some way?
Yeah, that's not a diet. That's just stupid.
And then there's, of course, the institutionalized forms of fat phobia that you said, you know, how it's illegal, the inherent bias, medical inherent bias, all these ways that it shows up. And
it's not inherent medical bias. Run your profession based on facts. The fact of the matter is that people of a higher body weight have a higher chance and percentage of having bad joints, strain on the heart. Like, excess fat is a problem based on facts. And guess what? It's also a fact that if you are severely underweight, these are problems. It's not a bias. It's just facts. Just because you don't like the facts doesn't mean they're wrong. They're like, well, everyone's entitled to their opinion. No, these are facts. Your opinion is what you think of the facts. You're entitled to that. But you can't say the facts are incorrect when it's been proven time and time again that they are true.
If I were to take a Venn diagram where we say on one side is health and one side is fat, and where people see fat and they see it as unhealthy, where do those converge in the middle? Really, what is your definition of health?
And this is the part of the podcast that I think most of the reactions that I have watched focus on is her being asked, what is your definition of health? Here's her answer. She doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, that's really complicated.
It's not. It's really not.
Right. I think I want to talk about that question, but I want to start by saying
you don't need to talk about it. You just answer it.
That, you know, no one has to be healthy. No, right? Like, I mean, it's like, no, like there is no governing body that's like out there putting, you know what I mean? It's like no one owes anybody that.
You owe yourself that. People who are recovering from an eating disorder, we owe it to our younger self. We owe it to the years we lost to do everything now. Not do everything right, not do everything correct, not do everything perfectly, but do everything in our power. And that's going to be different for everybody. To just better ourselves as best we can. We don't have to be great. We don't have to be the best. We don't have to be exceptional. We just have to try to better ourselves to the best of our ability. Nobody else, we owe ourselves that. And that means health. That means healthy choices. That means prioritizing health. Sometimes.
In either the traditional sense of the word or any other more innovative or, you know, more politicized, maybe even version of that word. So I think it's important to say, like, and I want to back up and bring in intersectionality and say, like, right, like, look at the disabled community.
But we're not talking about the disabled community. This is another terrible tactic in debate, and it's not acceptable. You've presented me with this thing that I can't answer, but look over here. And then people are like, you're right. And they completely forget about this thing that they actually wanted to know. Diversion. And it's totally unacceptable. Like, we're too old for this shit. Woman, I think she's older than me. So come on now. Just answer the fucking question.
Right? Like, I think people with disabilities and activists within that space have consistently been saying, like, I'm never going to be your notion of healthy. That doesn't mean I don't get to be a full human. You get to treat me some kind of way.
A person who's lost their leg or was born missing fingers, they're not going to grow the leg back. They're not going to grow their fingers back. However, an overweight person can lose weight.
Right? And so I think that I love taking that principle within disability rights to fat activism and to understandings of fatness. So
you're comparing two things that have nothing to do with each other and then being like, I can use the principles of one to influence the other. And it's like, no, you really can't, and you really shouldn't.
No matter what size you are, you don't owe anybody else your health. But I mean, for me, right, like in an ideal world, there wouldn't be health-based gatekeeping at all.
So you just want to get rid of the medical field completely. They're not gatekeeping, they're just making some suggestions.
What we know that humans need is they are connection, acceptance, love, comfort, affirmation.
Those are nice things, but we don't actually need those things to survive.
And so anything that isn't in that wheelhouse isn't promoting health in my mind. Actually, like a friend who's a PhD in nutrition, and she brought up this incredible question to me, and she was like, if science isn't serving humanitarian ends, then what is the point that we're doing? Like, what's the point of it?
It's science. It does promote humanitarian needs. It just isn't 100% aligning with you. You are a single human who had a doctor say to you one time something you didn't like. Science does support humanitarian needs. And if you don't see that, you have created a world where you are the main character, and you are so focused on being the main character that everything else is fighting against you. You are creating a us versus them mentality and making yourself into a victim of your own creating.
Right, because are we making science for aliens?
We don't make science. We discover. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. You don't make science. You don't make it. It just is. And we discover it and we figure it out. And sometimes things are discovered that aren't like what we were thinking it was going to be. That's what the point of the scientific method is. Hypothesize. And someone who has conducted multiple experiments over the course of my life, probably twice, my hypothesis was semi-correct. And that's the thing about science, is you could hypothesize something and your experiment does prove that, but it's still part of the scientific method to find errors in our own method. Like, and there's always open to learn more. You don't make science. Oh my God. It's like, this is what I'm going back to when she speaks. I'm like, you just sound so unintelligent because you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. She might be a scholar in the sense that her specific topic of study is fatness. Great, she's an expert, but don't branch out and try to talk about any other subject, and don't try to bring any other subject into that subject because you don't know anything about anything else.
If by our scientific notion of whatever health is right now, if that's excluding 68% of the population, which is like the plus size population, if that's excluding 70-ish% of the...
Is it 68? Is it 70-ish? Science does not exclude. Science just is.
Then it's not working.
It's not.
What's not working? It's the makeup of this world that we live in. It's the makeup of you and me. It's the makeup of my computer. It's the makeup of this TV that you can't see. Science is what makes the TV turn on, and why water makes things wet, because water might not actually be wet. It makes things wet. Why the digestive system works and how it works. It's just science is working. Because it's what holds this world together. What are you talking about?
Working. It's not working. No. I mean,
Yeah.
you took us all to church.
Just because you said a bunch of words strung together to form sentences, and a lot of those words were big and they were buzzwords, does not mean you said anything.
We talked a little bit before about how this intersects with gender. There's a lot of parallels there, I feel like, with the trans community, queer community, even in some ways my own expression of my gender.
Just because there are parallels does not mean that they are the same.
Entry point to this work was examining how weight discrimination and racism impacted how I see and experience my own gender and how I perform my own gender. It sort of started with a conversation I had with a friend I grew up with, and she said, do you remember when we were little and how you were always expected to play the boy whenever we were play acting?
Really?
Yeah, whenever we were play acting like stories from the Babysitter's Club or from books that were...
Babysitter's Club.
Yes! Yeah. Heterosexual romances in which I am being expected to play the boy 100% of the time, and it's not even discussed.
I remember playing the boy once. I remember that one time I played the boy. I dressed the most masculine of my friends. Like, everybody else was like super girly and loved pink and girly stuff. And I dressed in black and wear a hood and liked girls. I played the boy once, and then we never played stuff like that. So I find that I did not know this was a thing that kids did. My friends and I reenacted Evanescence music videos. That's what we did. And episodes of Teen Titans.
That as the largest bodied girl that I'm supposed to play the boy.
I don't understand why that was a thing. We're about halfway through the podcast. If you want to go listen to the whole thing, go right ahead. I will leave a link to it as long as it is still an active video. As adults, we have the brain capacity to process memories and find the connection between childhood, trauma and events and just experiences and memories and all that, and find the connection between that and the way we behave now. There's huge connection, obviously. First 5-6 years of a child's life are the most defining moments of who you're going to be as an adult. It's crazy, the connections. And I know this is the case for some people, but they converse in a way where this is the case for everybody of as children, we were processing our own gender, actually self-aware internal dialogue of processing our gender. She is speaking in a way like this was a process she went through as a child. And he's like, oh, right. Yeah, right. I'm like, is it? And I'm genuinely asking, is it? But it feels more like this is something you processed as an adult and you are now trying to inject your knowledge of self now into past memories of self then. Jamie says a lot more outlandish things that are probably just going to cause me to repeat myself. I think for the most part, I have addressed the points that jumped out at me the 3 times I have listened to this video. It's just really frustrating to hear people speak like this because it's you're just trying to make people feel bad for you for nothing. When I tell people my story, which I don't share it that often because it's not who I am, it's not my identity. My body is not my identity. But when, it comes up and I share, what I've been through, I don't tell them everything, but I'll share little things and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, do not feel sorry for me because I did it to myself. And sure, it was the result of years of abuse and bullying, but I did ultimately do this to myself. I have the consequences and the fucked up body that I have today because of it, and it is something that I am going to have to learn to live with, and I'm finding ways to live with it, and I am so happy. Don't pity me. No one made me do it. No one held a gun to my head and said, do this to yourself. No one did that. I did it to myself. And it's I'm not throwing a pity party of one over here. Take responsibility for your actions that have led you to whatever results. So that is this video. Sorry it is a really long one, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you did not enjoy it, you can give it a thumbs down. That is cool too. I do not mind. If you are not subscribed already, please consider subscribing and be sure to hit the notification bell to stay notified of all future uploads. If you have any comments, questions, video suggestions, anything at all, feel free to leave that in the comment section below. Be sure to go follow me over on Instagram, and I will see you next time. Bye!